Namaste and welcome to Youth TV Show produced by today's Youth Asia. Youth TV Show is a youth-led and youth-produced weekly television program. It is an outcome of 9 years of work and dedication of our youth. We interview prominent leaders from around the world. We cover youth events. We experiment with our innovative ideas. We discuss local, national, regional, and global issues. And we try to discover practical solutions to issues that concern our society. My name is Priyanka, and today we have with us Ms. Farahana Shah to discuss the importance of Islam in education. Ms. Shah currently works as the staff development teacher at the Montgomery County Public School in USA. She is currently on a short trip to Nepal. Let us hear from our guest speaker on the topic, Importance of Islam in Education.
Good evening, Namaste, Assalamu Alaikum, everyone. My name is Farahana Shah, and I am a staff development teacher in Maryland, USA, and my job basically consists of working with teachers to enhance the in their classrooms. And I consult with them, I coach, I train them, I write I write training plans, and I bring in specialists. So I wear many, many hats, and it depends on what is needed each day. And I have also, through a grant that was given from my school system, I wrote a module for non-Muslim educators on the overview of Islam that I've presented in many, many conventions there, and it is always well liked because even though 90% of Muslim students attend the public school system there, teachers still are not aware. So when they walk out, they get useful information about Islam, and then they understand because they want to learn more about Muslim students. Islam places great importance on education because the first word and revelation that came to Muhammad, peace be upon him, was read in the name of your Lord who taught man what he knew not, which means that it is a birthright of every Muslim, male, female, and child to get education because we know that education improves overall our thinking, our character. We become better citizens, we make better decisions when we have education, when we have knowledge. If we look into Islamic history, it was a great importance placed on education, and even the mosque is a great symbol of education in Islam because the first school was started in the first mosque that was built by Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his companions. And at that time, students, both girls and boys, were expected to attend, and the fundamentals of reading, writing, math was started, not the reading of the Quran. Yes, the Arabic, a little bit of Arabic, knowing the names of God, and few verses, short verses of the Quran were also taught in the beginning. But the fundamentals of reading, writing, and math were also one of the first things that were started. And after that, if the students progressed and they were interested in advancing their knowledge in the Quran, in the translation, and learning more about it, then they moved on to madrasas. And we know now that madrasas are used a little differently than it was at that time. So, but at the same time, emphasis was placed on biology, on statistics, all of the subjects that we teach today in our high schools, in our colleges, universities. So it's very important, and at this time, we know that in America we have Islamic education. It basically takes place in two forms. One is through private schools, which aren't too many, but they're still progressing. There are a lot more than there were a few years ago. And the most, I would say, accessible is the Sunday school. in which students who attend public schools, and most of the Muslim students, about 90% or more, attend public schools. So they choose to attend the Sunday Islamic schools for about 2 to 3 hours. So that is where they get their Islamic education. And however, we know that you can't get any kind of education 2 to 3 hours a week. It has to be something that's consistent. And that's why it is so important in Islam to get an education, both the world and religious.
In developing countries, people struggle for food, clothing, and shelter. How can people of such countries think of education as their basic necessity?
I think that comes back to the government, because each country you have a governing body that is responsible for you. So I think that should be something that should be part of their agenda. Just like food is necessary, clothing is necessary, shelter is necessary, so is education. Because we can continue to eat and clothe ourselves, but how do we enhance our minds? Because that also needs fuel, which is education and knowledge. And that's the only way we'll get out of that poverty is through.
Being a counselor, how can you suggest youth to develop themselves?
Well, what you're doing now is exceptional. You're developing yourself on your own, right? Taking initiation, that is a sign of leadership. When you initiate something, when you take the first step, you don't wait for somebody to come to you and say, do this. So always a sign of a good leader, or one that's going to be a future leader, is initiation. That this is something you want to do. You know that for your community this is something that's lacking, and then you find a way. You get people together to make it happen. That's how you develop yourself.
Does not the old education of madrasas place the young Muslims off track from their mainstream career choices?
Not, as I mentioned in my earlier talk, that the actual philosophy behind the madrasas wasn't what you probably see today. It was related to education. It was about math. It was about reading, writing, and Arabic and Quranic reading. So it included everything. It was both worldly knowledge as well as religious knowledge. How we deterred from that, I think, is where maybe the narrow-mindedness came in and kind of took over. So, and I think what happens is when you have people who don't initiate their own knowledge, when you rely on somebody else's knowledge, that's what happens. And I think that is where the madrasas became weak, because they started relying on, for instance, even in America, or Christians, let's say, who rely on just the knowledge of their pastors or priests, that's what they rely on, and that's what they're going to use. And we have a lot of Muslims who rely on Maulanas or Maulvis and think whatever they say is correct. That's where they become weak. And in Islam, it is you, it is God, and it is yourself that should be initiating your own decisions, your knowledge, everything. So there's no middleman. But when you start putting people as intercessors, that's where you become weak.